These are 3 true scary stories that have happened to 3 professional wrestlers who wrestled on the independent wrestling scene. The stories are not necessarily about wrestling itself, however, and specific names of wrestlers and companies will not be mentioned. The Smokey Mountains story does not refer to any promotion who has used that in their name. Number 1. Smokey Mountain. I never made it big as a professional wrestler. My entire career was spent on the independent wrestling circuit, wrestling in the late 1980s and early 1990s. For anyone who knows much about that sort of life, it can be very difficult. You can travel long distances in your car on a nightly basis, sometimes wrestling a match for $25 or $50 flat. In order to make money, very often when I was traveling, I had to sleep in my car, rather than shelling out my entire fee for a hotel room. Now mostly I wrestle in the Midwest. However, I got a call from a promoter who had a relatively successful indie promotion in the Smoky Mountains. Someone had sent him some video of one of my matches, and he was impressed. This was a promotion with a weekly television show too, and it may have worked out to be a regular job. I had never been to the Smoky Mountains, or really anywhere in the South at all in my entire life, so I had no idea what to expect. But I was willing to maybe try and find my place there, if it got my foot in the door with a regular job as a wrestler. So I got into my car, and I made my way down to the mountains. Or up to the mountains, I suppose. If you've lived in the flatlands like I had all my life, going up into the mountains can be a very heady experience. The Smoky Mountains, if you've never seen them, are amazing to view off in the distance as you're coming up upon them. And the clouds rising up really do make it look like the mountains are smoking. Most of my wrestling previously had been up in Wisconsin, so being here was like a completely different world for me. My talks and tryout with the promoter went very good. They were going to give me a run in a minor storyline, and if I caught on, I could be a regular character there. However, I would need to be there for at least a month. The money was decent too, so I was hoping things would work. The problem was that there was no way that I could live in my car every single night for a month while I was waiting. Now, I didn't know any of the guys I'd be wrestling with. I guess if I had, I may have actually been able to find someone to room with for a month. Guys in the wrestling business can be like that. But I didn't think about that, and tried to find a place that would let me rent on a short-term basis. I found this sort of hotel that rented rooms by the week. I went and checked it out, and honestly, it looked precisely like something you would have expected to see from a horror movie. And not a nice hotel like the Bates Motel. Like something you'd expect to see from Wrong Turn or something. The lady who owned it reminded me of the little old psychic lady from Poltergeist. The rooms were sort of dilapidated, and it smelled a little funny, but it was fine. I had a clean bed, and I knew I'd be spending the majority of my time working anyway. Most of the work I did in the Smoky Mountains was enjoyable. I was used to some pretty fanatical fans, who took wrestling way too serious in Wisconsin, but some of them in the mountains were much more so. And I was playing a heel or bad guy character, and so I got a lot of heat from the audience. I like to think that I played my character pretty well because the small crowd really let me have it. About 2 weeks after I got there, I was working out. I was out pretty late and was pretty tired when I got back to the hotel. When I got there, the door was bolted from the inside. Someone had to be in my room. Weirded out, I went to the office to see what was wrong. There was no one there. I waited. I rung the bell. I even walked behind the desk to see if someone was back there, but there wasn't anyone. Frustrated, I went to walk back to my room. As I did, I saw the door opening to it. A very, very large man, dressed in muddy overalls, walked out of my room. He very obviously had blood on him. He looked at me for a moment, obviously not expecting me to have been there. Quickly, though, he slipped back into the room. I ran up to it, trying to open it again, but I couldn't. I ran over to the office, took the phone, and called the police. The police broke down the door. The man was in there, along with the woman who owned the hotel and worked at the desk. He had stabbed her 17 times, but she was somehow alive. The man was a wannabe wrestler. He had tried out in the promotion I was working for, and they never hired him. And I guess he was pissed that they gave a job to a city boy like me. And he broke into my room and was waiting for me. I guess the manager went to service the room, and he attacked her instead of me. It's messed up. Why someone thinks they should try to kill someone just because they didn't get the job they wanted. And that's bizarre. Number 2. Fanatic. Probably the most difficult thing about being a wrestler is the amount of time you have to spend on the road. A lot of people assume it's the pain from the moves, the injuries, or the fact that it's hard for the majority of us to make a good living off it. But the thing that I'm sure the majority of us will tell you is that being constantly on the road is the hardest thing of all. One of the things that made it easier for me was that I wrestled as a member of a tag team at the beginning of my career. So me and my partner would be driving together all the time, and both of us got along like really good brothers. So it was always a pleasure for us to be riding along. And the problem was that he was much older than I was, and after a couple years, he decided to hang up the boots. I wasn't ready to go out and join another team, so I decided to be on my own. Unfortunately, that made the traveling much more difficult on me. The long drives by myself were some of the most difficult things I had ever experienced in my life, though. The worst thing happened on the way to a match in the Midwest. I'm on the East Coast, and I had quite a drive ahead of me. But the money I was being offered was more than worth the time to drive, so I went to it. I figured it would make a good 2-day trip, and I could get a cheap hotel room. Don't ask why I didn't take a cheap flight, though. I hate flying, so it wasn't even a thought. That idea to me is a horror movie unto itself. I found a nice little hotel. As I walked out of the office, there was a guy out there who kept looking at me. He was really strange looking, dirty, scraggly beard that was patchy in places. And he had the craziest looking eyes I'd ever seen. I'm a big enough guy. I'm not larger than life like Hulk Hogan or anything, but I am big enough. When I was in the office, he stood outside the window watching me. And I guess I sort of hope he recognized me, but that's pretty unlikely. I wasn't really well known. When I left the office to go to my room, he didn't follow me immediately. But after I was close to my room, he began walking toward me. I went into my room, locked the door, and made sure the curtains were closed. I had a hard time getting to sleep, but when I finally did, I forgot all about the man. The next day, I got up and the man was gone. I got in my car and finished my drive. I got to town and got another hotel room. Now, this is where it gets really weird. When you're in the ring, you don't really notice people in the crowd unless you're looking for them. However, I was in the ring and I took a dive over the top rope and onto the floor. When I got to my feet, I was shocked to see the man from the previous night standing in the front row, right by me. I was put off my game because he would have to had followed me for 8 hours to get there. It seemed like way too much of a coincidence. When my opponent came out to get me, he could tell I was put off, but I wrestled through it. But throughout the entire thing, my attention kept going back to that guy. I don't like to think I ever put on a bad match, but I put on a bad match. By the time I was done, I turned to look, and the guy was gone. It was like he was there only for my match. I stayed until the end of the show. I couldn't get the guy out of my mind. I left with the other wrestlers, but I didn't see him in the crowd. Fortunately, I was able to get out of there and back to my hotel. When I arrived at the town, I had went straight to the venue. I checked into the hotel. When they gave me the key to my room, I needed to go back to the car to get my bag out of the back seat. As I walked around the corner, I stopped in shock. I watched the trunk door open and saw the creepy man crawling out of the trunk of my car. It was then that everything hit me. I didn't keep anything in the trunk, and instead of following me, he had been riding in the trunk for the entire 8-hour trip. And the man saw me and froze. He then smiled, opened up his jacket, and took out the scariest looking knife I had ever seen. Again, I was bigger than him, but I wasn't impervious to a knife. I turned, ran back into the office. We locked the door and called the police. The man didn't pursue me, but he was eventually caught. When he did, we found out that the man was a wrestling fan from the town I live in, and primarily wrestling. He hadn't met up with me at the hotel. He had been in the trunk of my car the entire time. He hated my character and was pissed that I had several victories over his favorite indie guy. So he was trying to take matters into his own hands. This is a weird-ass story, and I'm sorry if it's not horrifying, but think about it for a while. I drove over 2 days with a sick man hiding in the trunk of my car, a man who wanted to hurt me because I was booked to win a match over someone else. Wrestling has always been good to me, but to take it so seriously, to do something like this, something so sick. I mean, even if the matches weren't predetermined, it's sick to take anything that serious. Number 3, the bar. This is an old story. Wrestling was a lot different back when I was in the business. Although most people really knew the matches were predetermined back then, it wasn't widely admitted. And although some people nowadays take it very seriously, I don't think it is anything like it was back when I was in the business. I am also going to use a fake name for the wrestler I was feuding with, because he doesn't want to be named. I will call him the hero, because he was the face or good guy. Yeah, that's important to know. Back then, it was really important not to break character in public, so it could get you into trouble. My buddies and I always went out to a bar after our weekend matches. It was pretty common back then, and one of the things I miss most about being in the business is the camaraderie. Anyway, some of the fans were pretty weird. I guess we played our parts really well, and they were able to get lost in the story. But there were a few guys who were at the matches every single week, and they really got into it. They would jaw with the referee, the wrestlers. I mean, they took it very serious. One night, I was at the bar with my friends when I recognized one of the fans in the bar. He was a skinny, lanky type, and I knew he was one of the guys who took things a bit too seriously. He recognized me and came up to me, telling me that I was going to get my ass kicked in an upcoming match. And keeping in character, since I was a heel, I told him to just fuck off. He got pissed and pushed me up against the bar. I got angry, got up, and pushed the guy down. He fell onto a table. In no time, the much smaller bouncer came to throw us out of the bar. I was pissed off, but I didn't want to cause the bouncer a problem, so I left the bar. I was too angry to just drive home. I walked around a little bit to cool off, and it actually helped. I determined that I was able to drive because I was less angry, and I was not really buzzed, so I went to my car. As I was unlocking the door, I suddenly felt this excruciating pain in my leg. My balance was gone and I fell to the ground. I looked up and some asshole was under my car with a knife. It was the guy who I got into the scuffle with, of course. He had been hiding under my car. I looked at the man who had the sickest smile on his face. I tried moving away from him, and I was a bit successful because he was restrained by the car. And then I began yelling for help. He cut my leg up pretty good. I watched as he took the knife, stabbed it into the ground, and then held it, using it to pull himself out from under the car. He said to me, "There's no way you're gonna beat the hero, because you'll never wrestle again." No one was coming, and I was terrified. I kept calling for help. The man then slashed my Achilles tendon. If you've never had that part of your ankle cut before, then you can't imagine the agonizing pain it caused. I was certain that the man was just going to kill me. He stood over me, holding the knife, and finally just shook his head. "The hero wins by forfeit," he told me, and lowered himself to his knees. He kept looking at me, gripping the knife in his hand. I was waiting, expecting the stab, but all he did was stare at me. When a bouncer finally came out of the bar, the man got up and ran off into the dark. Here's the weirdest part. The following week, the man actually showed up at the show. He had a front row seat. He was, of course, immediately arrested. He was insane. He couldn't understand why he was in trouble for hurting a bad guy. It was important for the hero to win. What an idiot. Professional wrestling is a lot different nowadays. This happened back in the 80s. Hopefully, shit like this doesn't happen anymore. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. Sorry for the delay in videos. I really wanted to work hard on this one because it's WrestleMania weekend. I hope you enjoyed it, even if you don't like wrestling. All three wrestlers agreed with me that they should remain anonymous on this video. One of them I know rather well, and he is a good guy, and I'm sorry he went through what he did. I know not all of you like wrestling, but I thought these stories were scary too, so I hope you enjoyed them. In my next video, I'm going to post an urban legend read by one of my favorites, Elfin Lycoda. I'm probably going to read Tomino's Hell in Japanese and English in that video. But, as I've mentioned before, I'm a little fanboyish about Elfin Lycoda, so I'm just happy to be having a video with him. If you'd like to read print versions of these stories, please check out the Killer Orange Cat subreddit in the link provided. You can also take a look around at the Killer Orange Cat merchandise store. We have a really beautiful new shirt with a picture of a child in bed under the covers, hugging a killer orange cat to protect it from whatever is under the bed. I think it's really cute. In the meantime, if you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please consider hitting the subscribe button below, or using the icon of Ichigo the cat that will appear at the end of this closing. Feel free to leave me a comment to let me know what you think of the video, and consider sharing it with someone you think might enjoy it. You can always follow Ichigo and myself on Facebook and Twitter using the links in the description. If you have a story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please send it to the address provided in the description. My main requirement is that the story is original, meaning it has not yet been read on any other YouTube channel. Now, for those who watch wrestling, I hope you enjoy WrestleMania weekend. For the rest of you, don't worry, I probably won't put out another wrestling video until next WrestleMania. But, wrestling fans and horror fans alike, I must tell you, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.